Hi, I'm Triana Rivera-Megias,
And I'm Hannah Giampietro.
and today we will be presenting our Biology 300 Lab Human Demography Investigation. As you can see from our title, we will be investigating whether geographical location will serve as a determining factor of survivorship within a population. Prior to our investigation, we pondered many factors that may affect a population's survivorship. Ultimately, the possibility that geographical location may impact a population's survivorship made us contemplate on how our communities may play a pivotal role on how long we live. Going forward, we hypothesized that survivorship is influenced by geographical location, and that urban locations would have lower survivorship rates than rural areas. For our investigation, we chose two representative locations within Maryland that would serve as our experimental groups. We predicted that Baltimore City residents would have lower survivorship rates than Carroll County residents. Illustrated in this slide are the experimental groups. Baltimore City will represent our urban location, and Carroll County will represent our rural location. The difference between urban and rural locations are based on population densities, where Carroll County and Baltimore City respectively contain population densities of 373.4 and 7,671.5 per square mile. One may wonder how we predicted that urban locations will have lower survivorship rates than rural locations. There are three variables that may impact a human's livelihood and health that is specific to geographical location. These three variables are crime rate, air pollution, and risk of disease transmission due to population density. As listed above, our prior research indicates that Baltimore City's crime rate, air pollution, and risk of disease transmission contain greater numbers than Carroll County, which unfortunately also indicates that Baltimore City residents are at greater risk of developing chronic diseases and experiencing premature death.
In order to begin our experiment, we had to take into account some variables that we needed to manipulate and control in order to create a good experimental design. The independent variable which we manipulated in our experiment was the two geographical locations, urban and rural, and our dependent variable was the birth and death data, and ultimately the survivorship rates in each location. In order to minimize confounding effects in our experiment, we kept variables such as population sizes, century of birth date, state, and country constant in each of the two groups. However, some variables were more difficult to control, which include socioeconomic status, access to medical facilities, and the advancement of medical technology throughout the 20th century. In order to perform our investigation, we used the online cemetery database, interment.net, that was provided to us. We searched for Carroll County and Baltimore City cemeteries on this website in order to collect our data. We ended up having to utilize 5 different cemeteries in Carroll County and 1 cemetery from Baltimore City. We collected the date of birth and death of 200 people for each group. After rounding our data, we constructed static life tables using the instructions that were provided. Illustrated in this slide are the respective cemetery names, geographical locations, and geographical coordinates of each cemetery we collected data from. There are 5 cemeteries within Carroll County and 1 cemetery in Baltimore City. In our experiment, we constructed static life tables and survivorship curves of urban and rural age at death data to test our hypothesis. However, this method involves assumptions. It assumes a stable age distribution where the percentage of individuals in each age class does not change from one time period to the next, even when the total population size is changing. They also assume that the population size is constant, where there is no change in birth rates and no net immigration or emigration. Using the age structure by gathering age of death of a population gives less reliable information because it only provides a snapshot of the population at one instant in time. Having only a snapshot of a population is not the most accurate because populations are frequently changing. However, it still gives us a relative idea of what the population size looks like and helps us estimate survival rates.
Within the next few slides, we will be covering the results from the data we collected and our interpretations of each result. We constructed 2 life tables for each experimental group. Illustrated in this slide are the static life tables of Baltimore City and Carroll County. Within the next few slides, we will present our observations and interpretations of this life table, as well as displaying the survivorship curves. The first observation we made from the static life table was that Baltimore City had a greater initial number of individuals surviving than Carroll County. Carroll County had greater number of deaths within the age group of 1 to 5 years. Carroll County had 25 deaths and Baltimore City had 9. In this slide is the survivorship curves of both experimental groups, where the green line represents Baltimore City and the yellow line represents Carroll County. Within this survivorship curve, there is an outlined arrow pointing to the initial number of individuals surviving, where you can observe the vast difference between both experimental groups. The second observation we made within the static life tables is that Baltimore City's surviving population prematurely decreased to 0 prior to Carroll County. As you can see, Carroll County still had surviving individuals between the ages of 91 to 95, where Baltimore City did not. Again, here are the survivorship curves of each experimental group. This time, the arrows are color-coded to each respective experimental group. Each arrow is pointing to where the survivorship curve reaches the x-axis, which is indicative that there are 0 surviving individuals in the population.
This slide shows the survivorship curves of Baltimore City to the left and Carroll County to the right. We constructed these survivorship curves from the static life table data, and they illustrate the difference in the survivorship rates in our 2 locations. On the x-axis, it displays the age groups of individuals, and the y-axis displays the number of survivors in the population per 1,000 individuals. The number of individuals surviving in each age group in both Baltimore City and Carroll County decreases as the age groups increase. However, as we'll see more clearly in the next slide, the curves do not decrease at equal rates. Here, with the survivorship curves displayed together, we can see that the slope of Baltimore City's curve, green, is much steeper than Carroll County's curve, yellow. In fact, when we calculated the slopes of the curves between the ages of 36 to 90, we found that Carroll County had a slope of negative 11.3 and Baltimore City had a slope of negative 13.7. This reinforces our observation that Baltimore City's survivorship curve decreases at a faster rate than Carroll County's. After careful consideration of our experimental results and research prior to this investigation, we conclude that our experimental findings do support our initial hypothesis and prediction. As previously stated, Baltimore City's survivorship curve decreased at a faster rate and had 0 survivors within ages 91 to 95, whereas Carroll County had a slower rate and had individuals surviving from ages 91 to 95. The differences in survivorship curves and number of individuals surviving between these 2 geographical locations in Maryland can be attributed to the differing crime rates, higher air pollution, and increased disease transmission. Now that we have completed our investigation, we took some time to think about how we can modify and improve our investigation in order to make this experiment more generalizable among other populations and allow our results to be more representative of each location. We believe there are several modifications that we could perform in order to improve our results in our investigation. Due to our online cemetery database, we felt we were limited to the samples we could collect. 2 things that we could have modified in this experiment would be to physically visit the cemeteries in each location and collect larger sample sizes. We were very limited with samples for Carroll County, and we had to collect samples from 5 different cemeteries in order to have 200 samples required for our investigation. A possible reason for why they were very limited samples in Carroll County could be due to the fact that this online database was not recently updated. If we could physically visit the cemetery or collect more data, we would be able to obtain more samples, which would allow our results to be more representative of each location.
We hope that the findings of this investigation may shed light to the unequal conditions that one may face while living in a particular geographical location. In the future, we may consider performing other investigations in order to make our findings more generalizable. For future experiments, we would like to use biological sex as a control group, explore different states and countries, construct dynamic life tables for each population, and compare the survivorship among rural, suburban, and urban locations. Thank you for watching this presentation.
We hope you enjoyed this investigation.